Welcome, everybody, to episode 64 of the Corner Blue. I'm Andres Rico, and I'm here with Hugo Alvarado. Thanks for joining us yet again. Here we are in the aftermath. It's been a little bit. It's been, I'll have to admit, a little hard to get motivated to hop on and record an episode, just due to all the abrupt changes, some of the results that we've gotten recently. And it's just been kind of a moment to just digest everything as it falls into place. Yet there was some interesting news that popped up today that both Hugo and I got excited about and decided, it's time to hop back on and record another episode. How you doing, Hugo?
Doing well. It's been a busy day. It's been a very important day for me, I will say, in many areas related to Salvadorian culture, my culture. Today I went to my son's school. I have an 8-year-old, and there was a cultural day. So I had to I actually made some pupusas. So I cook. Maybe a lot of you guys don't know that, but I like cooking. So I learned how to make pupusas a few years ago. So I made like 30 pupusas.
30? Damn.
Brought them over to the school, talk a little bit about El Salvador and the culture and my memories from growing up, my first 9 years of my life there. And it was really cool. Obviously, I had to talk about La Selecta and how the sport is like so big over there for us, and my role in Salvadorian soccer with the scouting, I haven't talked about this much, but I continue to scout officially for La Selecta. It was during that transition period after Carrillo left. I continue doing my role unofficially, just working directly with Coach Perez at that time. But for over a year now, I've been having conversations with the president of the federation and Diogo Gama and different people. It's taken a while, but I continue as with my role as a scout, which it's something very dear to my heart. So I'm very happy to continue contributing. It's still a role where I don't get pay for, but I continue doing this for the love of the game and my desire to support and help the national team with the scouting work that I do. So it's and then the cherry on the cake to end the day was that game. I hopped in the car after the school and I saw the news about the Inter Miami game. So it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, definitely something to look forward to when we thought that we had seen the last of La Selecta, basically until the beginning of or early next year. Definitely something that had been rumored, or there had been posts about it on social media the last couple of weeks. So cool to see that it looks to be official. It's going to be on January 19th, and yes, Inter Miami is going to start off its preseason against La Selecta at El Cusca. But I think we're going to talk about that later on. We'll get back to that. I know it's exciting and all, but we're fresh off of the first 4 matches under Rubén de la Barrera's tenure. 2 against Martinica and then 2 against Curaçao. We're still on that winless streak, that famous winless streak that everyone was pointing to during the past year, and trying to put Coach Perez under hot water. But Hugo, did you watch these matches? I know a lot of people tuned out. A lot of people had no interest whatsoever in watching these games. Twitter on La Selecta was very silent during those matches, but Did you watch it? What were some of the conclusions that you got out of it?
I have some vague memories of the Martinica games. I did watch the Curacao games. The first one I watched the whole thing. The second one I couldn't. I had some other things going on, so I kind of watched on and off. Um, there's been a big change. There's been a big change, and I think that um, obviously the games against Martinica were official games, so there was a different sense of it. And I think there were a couple players who continued to evolve in the national team, and kind of they have been important pieces, even the last two games that Hugo Perez had, and one of them is Armando Moreno, who seems to be taking more of a starting lineup, and becoming an important player in the attack for the national team. I saw him against Martinique. I think he did well, and against Curacao, he was probably one of the few players that we saw who try to create something and attack. However, with that being said, I just think that there's been a big change in players, so it's a little bit difficult to generate an analysis, because the coach is new. He's trying out different players. Some of those players 6 months ago were not even considered as as a second option or a third option. So hopefully some of them get to convince the coaches that they have what it takes to be part of the national team. I still think that probably there's always one thing that is important to understand. I think for us fans. I mean, I'm going to call myself a fan right now, and I mean, obviously, I have some of my experience as a scout, and also talking to different coaches. And we've said this during the Hugo Perez time. Coaches have a way in which they want to play. They look for certain profiles and certain traits in players. So there's always going to be a few players, the Salvador Correas of Carlos de los Cobos, the first time with the national team, where a lot of people are like, I don't want to see him in the national team. Why is he there? But there was something about him that De Los Cobos liked, and he kept calling him. So I think there's always going to be some variations. However, I do think that probably the best we have, it's about 80% of what Hugo Perez was calling. I think that Hugo Perez's team. So against Curacao, we saw a completely different roster, and I think that it showed. It showed on the field that there were a lot of players who were just playing their first minutes with the national team, and Curacao had a lot of players from the Dutch second division, and they were at points they made us look really bad at a lot of times, actually. So I think there were just games for the coach to get to see some of the local players, and I just hope that the coaches made the best of it. They observed what they needed to observe, and the players who maybe have been second options, third options, had their opportunity to show. I think there could be a couple of players from that call up against Curacao who might have something interesting to show and compete against what what I'm that 80% that I'm talking about. I think there's uh, when Hugo started, there were players that were being called for the first time, and it's like the whole qualifier was their opportunity to grow. Uh, I mean, Enrico could be one of them. Mengíbar got called towards the end. Jairo Enriquez was completely forgotten. He was not even the map of the national team anymore. So I think there are players who gain a lot of experience in the last 2 years, and now they are more mature and can perform more in the national team. So I think it was just referring to the Curaçao games. I think it was mostly an opportunity for the coach to see players and start implementing the style of play that he wants. But I still think that um, there's a bigger pool of players who will most likely uh, be part of other matches, I think.
Yeah. When I saw these lineups, man, it the one thing that resonated or just came to my mind was the infamous Zimbabwe game from like, what was it, 2004, 2003, where like a former member of La Foot or someone involved with soccer decided to sign a contract in Zimbabwe saying he was going to take the national team to go play there. It was not officially through La Foot. So this guy on paper basically lies to the Federation of Zimbabwe, gets a whole band of players from El Salvador, some in contention for the national team or were playing for the national team, like Ernesto Voces, Victor Velasquez, to name a few. But ultimately, once the news got back to El Salvador that squad naming itself as Salvador played, all heck broke loose. And so for me, it was like going from the squad that we saw against Trinidad, albeit with the loss in hand, to seeing the squad or the lineups the last four matches. It's night and day. I mean, you can see certain players that have been, you know, in the national team longer than even Hugo Perez, but you see the touch there with some of them. But if you notice the back line with the absence of Zabaleta, with the absence of Cabaceta due to injury, then you have the Macas playing a couple games and then being left off. You have Juan Martinez making his debut at left back against Martinique. Then you have Jefferson Valladares making his debut and being thrown in there. Um, the word is cohesion. It was something that Hugo Perez was looking for and had a hard time finding, at least throughout this year with that generational change. But that's the main thing that it's like, okay, there was build up. Now you have to start from scratch. And I feel like throughout the last four matches, that's what's been missing. What I did like is seeing Ruben de la Barrera sticking with the two contenciones, two defensive mids. I think that due to our athletic limitations, we need that security with two defensive mids. Things that stand out, like you said, Amando showing his commitment, showing up to these games and being participative and trying to get things going. Yet again, that final third is where things are lacking. We had Brian Hill missing out on the series against Curaçao. Many of the main starters opting out for various reasons. And it left a gap or a vacuum for who was going to be the leader. And I think one thing that someone that stepped it up and that kind of showed a different side of the personality was Cristian Martinez during this game, again the games against Curaçao, where you saw someone step up, correct people, kind of pull ears when needed. And I think it was a pleasant surprise to see leadership coming out from him, considering that this team lacked a lot of its core veterans. Um, but I still have my concerns, man, in terms of the touches, in terms of the personnel choices, where you're bringing players that haven't been through the youth national team processes of the last couple of years. So it's basically starting from scratch with, some yeast from other batches of bread. That's the way I look at it. And it is somewhat of a concern to me. Another thing that stands out during the second to last match against Curaçao was a free kick, minute 68, if I'm not incorrect, where there was a tiff between a tisk between Harold Osorio and Mayer Hill, where they couldn't decide who was gonna take the free kick. Mayer grabs the ball. He's arguing with Harold, and he ends up throwing it to him, like all pissed off, like from a couple, like point blank range, and just chucks the ball at him. And I'm like, what is going on here? I haven't seen this type of division, on the field since maybe the Maño days. So that was just something very concerning to me. There are symptoms of things that are if we can see certain things on the field and on the camera, to me, it must be symptoms of something else going on. And to be honest, like heading into 2024, starting again from scratch, basically eliminating all the progression of 2023, if you want to even call it that, depending on what your opinion is. It's just concerning heading into the new year when you see Panama on the rise, when you see Honduras almost wake up and get a couple get a result against Mexico at home, and then have Mexico against the ropes. When you see that we're ranked, what is it, 12th in CONCACAF now, after we were what, in the 8th spot around there, if I'm not mistaken. That's the type of stuff that concerns me, and it's kind of the reason why it was hard to get the motivation to record a pod. Now, I think the inevitable moving forward is, how do you get some of the vets, if they're even eligible or being considered by the coach, de la Barrera? How do you get them to buy in? I know that's a question that's been thrown out there also in the media and so on, but that's a very important question. The opting in of the vets, the biggest absences, of course, being Zabaleta, Roldan. Roldan, we still haven't heard from him directly, so it's a little enigmatic as to the reasons why. Zabaleta, in some interviews, explained his reasoning for opting out of these last two matches. But I think we are going to need some of the vets. If during the last cambio generacional, if that was done too abruptly, as we've talked about on this show, now this one being even more abrupt, I don't know how good our chances are getting through next June. I don't know if you want to comment on anything about that, Ulo.
Yeah, like I said, in my personal opinion, from a fan's perspective, I believe that the 80% of the best players, the best squad that we have, is what we've been seeing throughout 2023, from 2022, 2023, up until the change in coaching. And there's always going to be different, coaches want a different style, different type of player. That's always going to happen, and that's completely normal. But I think that yeah, there, like I said, there are players who gain that experience. They mature in the last 2 or 3 years, and they are players that I personally think that are necessary, are needed. Um, I can't speak directly to as to like the Zabaleta situation or Roldan, but one thing that I've said before, and I say it again, and this is not necessarily related to who's in the position of coaching the national team, but as a whole, it might need to come from the federation. I think it's important to create a culture and an environment where there's a smooth integration between the guys who come from abroad and the local guys, where um, they are all equal, but it is important to understand that they come from a different culture at the same time. They come from different working conditions, different infrastructure, and it's does not in any way saying that they need to get a special treatment, not at all. But it's important to understand that, because sometimes in our environment, if somebody asks for something, it's seemed as, oh, who do they think they are? you know, or it's looked upon as a good thing that a player grew up playing in terrible fields. That's like, yeah, that player juega con garra because of yes, that plays a role, but how do you acknowledge that? Because yes, that's to be admired as well. How do you acknowledge that, the way those players were brought up, but also how do you understand and also acknowledge and take the feedback when it comes from a player who comes from a different environment? So I think that the more welcoming the environment is, I think those players, if those players have any doubt for any reason or whatever that might be, I think that that's just going to make it easier for those players to want to play for the national team. And again, I'm not saying that they don't want to play. I don't know, but if people in El Salvador are talking about that subject or bringing that up, I think it's important to look at the whole picture, and I think that we are not in a position to ignore or ignore certain players. I think that our pool of players as of now is very, very, very small. It's limited, and I think it's important for the coaching staff to have all of the players available and the tools to be able to build the best national team that we can possibly have, because we do have, as much as maybe the hype or the hopes right now may seem kind of low about going to the World Cup, I still think that it's the best opportunity we have to go to a World Cup. And I think it's important to acknowledge that and try to find a way to create the most competitive team. And part of creating the most competitive team is working out whatever differences there might be, if there are, with players, and try to get them, bring them on board to compete and have the strongest national team that we can have. So I don't know. That's all I can say. I don't know.
That's a tall order, man. I just feel like it's reflective of of what we've been mentioning, what everyone knows, and it's just the lack of organization, a lack of professionalism that's plagued Salvadoran football for decades. It's just, you know, clasificamos dos veces, básicamente por accidente, uno podría ser, sin quitarle mérito a esas elecciones, like without taking credit away from those, and I would say heroic teams. But and they qualified to World Cups that were smaller, that had 16 teams, 24 teams, but there were circumstances, and they took that opportunity, and there were the stars aligned in a certain way that they qualified. Um, and to be quite honest, looking up the hill to 2026, I don't think there's any other way to qualify than by some divine intervention, because the way that things are being dealt with now, here we are in year two of a transitional board. Here we are, the sporting directors months into his tenure. Um, Here we are a couple months into the new coach's tenure, and we're less than a year away from the biggest matches of the next 2 years. Um, and at this point, to be trying out personnel the way we are, I think it's clear that, just like we talked about with Ted Russo, how each coach kind of has his comfort zone. I think it's been well established, whether it's been by trial by fire or by default, but we can see that Ruben de la Barrera is looking internally. It could be by necessity. It could just be that's his version of being practical. Um, but looking inwards, we're seeing results reflective of the reality in El Salvador. Now it's not just going to be the clubs that go out and get poor results, and we see other countries catching up result wise. Now we're going to start seeing it at a national team level, when you have either veterans or players that compete at higher levels, that can make that jump to hyperspeed of international play. I think we're definitely seeing that we're a couple beats off, or many beats off, whether it's the physical shape of the players, whether it's the technical aspect or profile of the player, and then minutes together as a unit, as a team. We're literally starting from scratch, and so in that sense, I am concerned, but despite that, I think one step in the right direction is getting a match, the profile of playing Inter Miami, the profile of having Messi in your own backyard. Um, I think it's something motivational to the players across the board. Maybe it could be this moment of unifying, and tending to some of the wounds or disagreements, and trying to get things in the right direction. Um, but at the end of the day, despite that, bringing Inter de Miami, bringing Messi to Saud is not going to fix all the problems, um, with Salvadoran soccer. That being said, as a fan, I'm excited as hell. I'm almost ready to buy my ticket and go down there. And I know, this match is the concept of it is very exciting to you. Um, as a fan that, you've been involved with the national team in various degrees, but you have never gone to Cusca. So
Yes.
I'm super stoked for you if you're able to make it to Cusca, because I'm not going to lie. And I've mentioned this before. I spent a couple months in Barcelona in 2012, and I got to see Messi and company, prime Messi, 90, what was it, 91, 93 goals in one calendar year, Messi at El Camp Nou, but it didn't come close to the atmosphere at Cusca especially when you're playing the big dogs or even the small islands, like the hardcore diehard fans under the rain. I remember Puri scoring under those types of circumstances, and there's nothing better than that environment. Getting there hours before the game, getting trashed before the game, and just coming down from the booze right before kickoff time, the choripanes, the mataninos, el pájaro picón blaring. So I think you're in for a good time, and I really hope that it happens for you, man, because it's gonna be amazing. I'd say better than Camp Nou. I'd rather see Messi at Cusca any day rather than Camp Nou.
I hope I can make it. Yes, it's actually a dream of mine to be able to watch a game at El Cusca, and God knows how many more games we have left at El Cusca with the announcement of the new stadium. So I think that that's it's in my bucket list. It's an experience I want to have. So I'm gonna see. Hopefully I can make it this time. And yes, I think it's a great opportunity for with everything that we've talked about, everything going on in our with the national team. It could be a great motivator for players. It could be an incentive to want to be in the national team and to compete and to up level your game in the local league. Whether you play in the local league or you play in another league, it should be taken as motivation to take care of yourself, to be in the best physical shape that you can be, so that you can be considered for that game. See, soccer is one of those things where there's the psychological part is very important, and it can switch. It can switch in one game. One game can change everything. And I know it's preseason for Inter Miami. It's probably gonna be like they're gonna be like a week into their preseason. Players are just gonna be coming back from the Christmas vacation. But hey, it's Messi and Busquets, Jordi Alba. If all those guys make it, if Luis Suarez is there, I don't know if he's gonna be part of Inter Miami at that point. But I think it's a good opportunity for the national team, for the coach. Hopefully, that could be the game where again, I don't know, but if the games against Curaçao were limited for whatever reason, in terms of you can only take local players or whatever, perhaps this could be an opportunity to get more of the base of the national team that you want to have moving forward. Beginning of the year, an interesting match at home could be a great opportunity for that.
I think it's a good opportunity for networking, marketing, the big gaps, at an administration level, creating those connections with the MLS, showing that we can host, matches of that level, players of that level, despite our limitations. Um, it's sad that stadiums or teams in the area in CONCACAF don't get to be under the spotlight internationally as much because of interest in local competitions or regional competitions, or just the way that CONCACAF runs things. It's not like in Europe where you could be from a small club, but you can hope that one day you can be in the Champions League, that type of deal, or in South America that you can be in La Libertadores. El Cusca doesn't regularly get matches like this. Granted, we still have yet to see a match played since the tragedy. I hope there's another match played, because I think it would just be
The
an
final,
awkward.
the
Oh
final
yeah,
will be played there.
and I know that it was iffy whether that was even going to happen or the scheduling, but I really hope that the local league addresses what happened with the tragedy, so that it's not that we forget it, but we can move on because I feel like the closure will be with Alianza there. Alianza has to play the first match. You'd wish, who knows if they're going to make it to the final, but in my opinion, it should be Alianza playing the first match back to pay tribute to those lost, and then move on, and then you know add a positive chapter to a stadium that in its heyday was the high standard in Central America. It's always been host to not at that stadium, but it was at Flor Blanca. But we've been host to Pelé, we've been host to Boca Juniors, Barcelona, um, to Raúl and Senna when Cosmos came. Um, and so this would just be another positive. Oh, Maradona when he did his tour as well. It'd just be a nice chapter of football or huge stars of the game making their way to El Salvador. And I think that'll be a nice event for the people back home, just to have that kind of excitement and get to see people that, maybe they wouldn't up close. And yeah, there's nothing better than being able to look forward to a match like that in your own backyard. So I think we'll close it with that. Um, it's a match of opportunity in several senses. But my main concern is how are we going to turn things around in the short term? Are these last four matches indicative of the personnel we're going to see moving forward? And if so, you got to get these guys together as much as possible so the guys with the growing pains can get them out of their way, out of their system, and then you let the guys that need to be the leaders rise up. Because I saw things seem to be breaking down during some of the matches, the two matches against Curaçao. Things seem a little fragmented. So we need that cohesion moving forward. And in that sense, hopefully a game like this, it's a friendly, but you want to showcase your talent, right? It'll be that motivating factor for whoever's involved, whoever's wearing that blue kit, and they represent us. So on that, hopefully we'll be able to record another episode before the end of the year, either about more details on the match, or if other matches get scheduled along the way. I think it'd be interesting to kind of do a retrospective on what's been a pretty rocky year, with super high highlights, in my opinion, considering, and then very, very low points. So I think we got one more in us for the rest of the year, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks again. Thank you for your patience. Anything that you want to say while we close out?
No.
All right.
Just
Hopefully
looking forward to the new year and exciting match. Hopefully I'll be there. I'll keep everyone updated if I make it.
Yeah, that'd be sick. We get there 4 or 5 hours before the match, or we go play an hour at La Gambetta, then walk over to Cusca, get there 4 or 5 hours before the game, kick it, listen to Pájaro Picón on loop. And I don't know, are you willing to venture to Vietnam, or where you want to be sitting for that game?
I don't know. I heard some people don't like what I do, so I have to be very careful, I don't want anybody to get the wrong idea, so
wear a paper bag over your head. Or go to La Lomita. But in any case, we'll close out with that. Appreciate all of you. Thanks for everyone that's hit us up in the meantime. It's not that we've given up on this thing. It's just, sometimes it takes a little bit to digest, in order to have something to talk about, because you don't just want to spew stuff or just kind of like, just throw things out there out of reactions to certain things. So that's why we took our time for stuff. But in any case, we'll see you guys next time. Hope you guys had a good Thanksgiving if you're here in the States, and internationally. I hope you enjoy the fiestas coming up, and hopefully we'll be able to celebrate with you, get an episode out there, and talk to you guys soon. Have a good one.